Okay, everyone should be able to see the slide deck that we have up today, which is being presented by myself, Taylor Mann. And on the line today, we also have Brandon Carlton from Standard Communications, who's graciously agreed to join us to talk specifically about the VA. I will give a full introduction to Brandon when we get to his section in our agenda today. This is going to be a relatively short webinar. Our goal today is to give everyone who's on the line an idea of the device hygiene challenges being faced, not just by hospitals in general, but specifically how it relates back to the VA, and then to walk through the various solutions and potential solutions to challenges of device hygiene, and then end that off with a discussion on the success that VA hospitals have had in addressing this problem, and case study information that we've seen in other facilities and how they've proven a really positive ROI on addressing this problem. So without any further ado, we'll get into the session today, and really want to start off with how to participate. We're going to do a Q&A at the very end. Folks should be able to put either questions or add chats into the by putting a question into the chat at the bottom right of the webinar. Should be able to go in there and add in questions. We'll have an opportunity at the end where myself or Brandon will go through and answer as many questions as we can. So if you have anything during the discussion, please throw it in there and we'll try to get to it at the end if we have time. So before we dive into all that, I want to start with who are we? Who is Clean Slate UV? Who am I? Why are we talking to you today? So my name is Taylor Mann, one of the co-founders, CEO of Clean Slate UV, and we are a biosafety company creating the next generation of intelligent solutions for a mobile-first world. We were first founded back in 2014 with an area on critical care areas, and the problem that our team identified and the problem that we saw was that mobile devices were becoming more and more commonplace in hospitals. We knew that they were going to become, there's a critical mass and a critical velocity of devices that were going to take hold in the next decade. But there was really no simple way for staff and visitors to sanitize these devices, and a lot of hospitals were just defaulting to cell phone bans. Fast forward 7 years, we now have we're now deployed with over 300 hospitals across North America. We are far and away the global leaders in device hygiene, and we've done that by taking a very science-first approach that includes, a lot of external validation, a lot of work with partners, a lot of focus on the impact that we can have. So what's the problem that we're really trying to solve? The problem that we're addressing is the fact that devices in hospitals and the mobile devices that are in our hands, in our pockets, they are filthy. They are the third hand that we never wash. And an average, academic studies have shown that an average of 1 in 4 hospital mobile devices are contaminated with pathogenic bacteria, not just, surface, like harmless pathogens or fomites, that kind of stuff, but actual pathogenic bacteria. And that's really important because ultimately what it means is that your phone goes from looking like this beautiful, sleek iPhone to then when you actually culture it, when you take, a visual representation of that, it ends up looking like the slide on the right, courtesy of the University of Surrey. And this is a huge problem because it means that this is what should be happening. This is when we talk about infection prevention, infection control, what we really mean and what we're really trying to focus on our work with providers on is ensuring that there is true personal hygiene as people are coming into, moving out of, and moving around all veteran health facilities. And that obviously that we're going to focus today on hospitals, but that includes the community-based outreach clinics, CBOCs. It includes other health providers, whether they're community-based care or rehab providers, physio, and there is a lot of focus, and rightly so. There's been a huge investment made on improving hand hygiene within the VA system and using that as our first best way to prevent cross-contamination in facilities. The problem is that in today's world, if you sanitize your hands or wash your hands and don't sanitize or wash your device, you are going to almost immediately recontaminate your hands. The rate of recontamination from hands back to devices is about 80%. And we've done multiple studies that have shown that when folks wash their hands and when they don't sanitize their devices afterwards, it really undermines the entire idea of hand hygiene. And that's why we call devices the third hand that we never wash, because ultimately it's about how can we prevent Trojan horses that bring bacteria into healthcare centers, but also bring bacteria around, or bacteria, viruses, spores in and around healthcare facilities, and then out into the community and into homes as well. And that's a huge problem. It's what ultimately we're trying to solve. So what are the problems that hospitals are actually facing with, in addressing this? Because there are a couple of distinct challenges depending on the setup of the facility. So the first is that if you're operating in a bring your own device environment where staff, visitors, patients are bringing in their own devices, then to effectively address device hygiene, you need to convince them, and whether it's their employees, visitors, that their devices won't be damaged by whatever technology you're going to ask them to sanitize it with. If it's a facility-owned device, like for instance is being rolled out across VA hospitals, Brandon's going to talk about this later, but Vocera solutions that are by now the most popular in VA facilities, then the business is ultimately on the hook that that disinfectants have on the longevity and the functionality of the devices. And I cannot tell you how many conversations we've had with informatics, IT, biomed, EVS, where they're having devices that are wearing out much faster than they should be, and warranty claims are being rejected because of the impact of the harsh chemicals that they need to use to kill pathogens on these devices. And then if you have a hybrid environment, like a lot of hospitals do right now, you get both sets of these problems. So you get really, really lucky. So what are the ways that a lot of hospitals can solve this problem or look to solve this problem? There's really three available routes. So the first is banning devices outright. This was the favorite approach for a number of years. It completely backfired in a lot of facilities because not only were people still using devices, but now there was no standardized methodology or practice for actually sanitizing the devices coming in. Because in today's world, in 2021, you cannot really decouple mobile technology from the patient care environment, from the patient and visitor experience. So this is just a non-starter for a lot of hospitals, and it's been increasingly recognized as just a complete and utter failure. Chemical wipes is the default solution for a lot of facilities, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then UV light, using it specifically for portable, non-porous items, has become more popular in the last number of years, and that's largely due to leaders like Clean Slate UV and others in the industry who are really pioneering research and the overall workflow integration. So for those of you unfamiliar, what is UV light? At its most basic form, UV light is just a certain wavelength of light that is calibrated to penetrate the walls of cells and can therefore kill bacteria, viruses, and spores. It is a line of sight technology, so what it cannot see, it cannot kill. Very important when we get into the technology piece later, but very important to recognize. And UVC, which is the wavelength that we are operating in, is it can be dangerous if it's not properly designed and contained. And that's again an area where we've taken a lot of steps, but to make sure that devices can be sanitized, but that everything else that needs to be protected is adequately protected. So what are the common approaches that hospitals are taking, or what are the common tools available for hospitals? These are examples of three of the leading options for wiping down environmental surfaces and devices in hospitals. And there's a couple important pieces here. So the first is obviously these are all disposable wipes. Almost every category of wipe that you'll find in a hospital is non-biodegradable. They are non-recyclable. They have to go in the waste bin. They have a contact time of up to 3 minutes, and they are proven to kill a wide range of items, but the amount of time required for that to actually take effect is higher than what most people are ever going to leave, have the contact time on a device. So at its most basic level, what are the two main differences between these two routes? So the first, for chemical wipes, they attack the cell wall, they attack the protein, they denature them, And by doing this, it not only sanitizes or kills the virus, the bacteria, the spore, but it can also remove biomatter, which is a benefit of using wipes, is that you're not just disinfecting or sanitizing, you're also cleaning at the same time, which is a benefit. But on the con side, these often require PPE for repeated use, particularly wipes that are strong enough to kill things like C. difficile spores, which often requires bleach. Repeated use of this in a professional environment can have really big occupational health implications if you're not using some type of barrier or glove. And lastly is that you have a contact time that's required after the initial use. So it's not good enough just to apply the technology. You then have to let it sit and to take effect, which is where you get that sort of 3-minute after contact time. UV light, on the other hand, uses, as mentioned, it's a wavelength of light that is absorbed by the DNA or the RNA. It damages the structure and it prevents replication. So it doesn't physically remove it, but it makes it so that it cannot replicate and effectively deactivates it. PPE is not required, and there's no additional contact time after the cycle, but it also then means that the cycle time for the UV process is incredibly important. So with all that being said, what I want to do is I want to invite Brandon Carlton in to join us and to go over a number of questions. So first of all, Brandon, do you want to unmute yourself, and I'll give you a brief introduction?
Yep, I'm here, Taylor. Thanks for having me.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. So first of all, I just want to give to everyone here who may be unfamiliar with Standard Communications and with Brandon. Brandon is account executive at Standard Communications. Standard is a VA-focused entity. They are a a service veteran disabled-owned business, small business, and they specifically work with VA hospitals to advance the next generation of communications technology, infection control technology, and clinical technology. So Brandon, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. And what I really want to I guess just discuss with you and with your expertise is to learn more about the challenges of device hygiene and the implications of this within the broader VA healthcare system. So I want to maybe start off just by asking, what have you heard from VA hospitals regarding device hygiene, and maybe just talk to you about your experience, being in and out of these facilities every single day.
Sure, Taylor. Yeah, and I think regarding device hygiene in sort of a current state in VAs, I think most of your standard is going to be, as you hit on the previous slide, is going to be wipes, which create a number of challenges, especially for clinicians. The number one challenge that I hear from clinicians in the VA and elsewhere, right? It's not just solely in the VA, but the workflow challenge that cleaning a mobile device, phone, what have you, with a wipe, the time, as you said, the time required to sanitize properly with a wipe can be up to 3 minutes. And I have yet to meet a clinician that has 3 minutes to wait for that wipe to dry, which means that inevitably we're either not using the wipes or not using them properly. That's the biggest challenge I see.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's, as you said, it's certainly not a challenge that's unique to the VA, but particularly given how fast certain technologies have been adopted there is certainly important. So can I just add, within the context of the broader VA healthcare system, how big of a priority is hand hygiene for VA hospitals, and how have you seen that tie into any of these kind of discussions?
Oh, it's huge, Taylor, and you'll hear this from the director of the facility all the way down to anyone that is there. Hand hygiene is a huge priority and initiative for all VA hospitals. The Office of Patient Safety will push out policies, initiatives, objectives around hand hygiene from 3 levels, really from national, VISN, and local levels at the facility level. So these are being pushed out and a huge area of focus, especially given the current time.
Yeah, no, I think that's I think that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that insight. And last question I can ask specifically on this topic is how quickly are VA hospitals rolling out mobile technologies? I know this is a huge part of what Standard does with VAs across the US. Talk to us about the velocity of that and what that means for for the future of the VA and mobile technologies in general.
Sure, and that's a big one too, Taylor. Great one to hit on. So kind of clinical communication technology within the VA. The standard, quote unquote, standard that we see is a lot of VAs are using Vocera, which is great. Vocera is moving towards a more what they call a smart badge, which requires more touching of the device, right? So it has texting capabilities and the like, which previous models of their badge did not have, required less touch. So, if you kind of look out into the future, VAs that have Vocera are going to be moving more towards that smart badge, which, as we said, create more touch. There's another side to the clinical communication, technology landscape, if you will, in the VA. As everyone knows, the VA is moving to Cerner's EMR platform. Well, as a part of that move, Cerner has included basically all of their applications, and with that, including their smartphone app. So each VA has Cerner's smartphone solution, whether they use it or not. And you could, again, looking forward as the EMR rollout progresses across the country, I think we're going to see a large influx of smartphones that caregivers are using in the VA as a result of that.
Interesting. And as a follow-on to that, real quick,
Sure.
Are those going to be primarily like individually assigned based on your understanding? Are those going to be assigned to individual staff members, sort of like on a permanent basis, or are they going to be rotating with shifts similar to like how a Vocera device might work?
It's a great question, Taylor. I've seen it done both ways, kind of varying between, depending on what VA you're in. I've seen a assignment, so a one device per person model. I've also seen the, shared model as well. So I've seen them both.
Yeah, and I'll say outside of the VA, we've also you can see the same, even within a hospital, right? Even different departments having different models depending on the need. And I think
exactly.
part of that for me is when you're looking at how to provide a standardized approach to addressing device hygiene in facilities, it does just speak back to the need for an approach that can be flexible enough to roll with those punches. Because even once you deploy technology, it may then your workflow may change. Like you don't want your device strategy, all this kind of stuff to be beholden to the way that you're sanitizing them, right? And I think that's one of the things that we've definitely seen outside the VA. So it's interesting to hear that kind of parroted within the few of the questions that you're asking or talking about as well. I do want to we have one question from an attendee that I think you're going to be better positioned to answer than I will right now, which is what did VA hospitals do at the initial stage of the pandemic when chemical wipes were in short supply? I assume this is directly correlated to like phones, other devices, that kind of stuff. Do you have any insight on that, and maybe why, like how that tied into the to the massive ramp up in their deployment of non-chemical disinfection technologies last year?
Sure. I've seen both kind of ends of the spectrum there, Taylor. So the obvious, right? I saw VAs that just simply didn't run out, right? So they were okay. I also saw the 180 opposite of that, right? So I saw VAs that had nothing. They were throwing, let's just use phones, right? They were throwing phones into a quote unquote UV room, along with many other things as well. There was just, especially the question was at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of scrambling going on, and that was definitely a part of it.
Yeah, that would. I think that makes I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so Brandon, I mean, before we move on to the remainder of the presentation, I'll ask you to stick around for in case there's any other questions at the end. But can you just talk a bit about, for obviously Standard Communications does a lot of work with VAs across the country, has a lot of specialties or specialized knowledge in contracting and access to both COVID funds as well as other recovery funds. Can you just talk, for anyone on the VA side who's looking to address device hygiene, is there anything, from Standard Communications that you want to highlight in terms of process, in terms of anything like that?
Sure. Yeah. As far as procurement goes, I think if a VA decides to procure Clean Slate, I think with our SDB OSB status as your VA distributor, I think we're going to make procurement as easy as we possibly can, right? So Clean Slate is available on our ECAT MedSurg contract. That's about as easy of a procurement path as there is. We've had multiple VAs utilize ECAT, the most recent being Big Spring, Texas. They just ordered several units last week, and there are many others. On the other side of that, Taylor, you touched on the COVID funds. That's can be a hot button topic inside the VA, but as far as Clean Slate goes as a solution, it comfortably qualifies for COVID funds. We've had dozens of VAs already utilize COVID funds to procure Clean Slate. And as Taylor, you could probably touch on a little bit, we do have proven efficacy against SARS-CoV-2, which that is kind of that's the slam dunk, if you will, as far as qualifying for COVID funding.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, no, Brandon, thank you so much for that. We'll get you to stick around for a few minutes, and I can take us home on a couple of the pieces of information here. So one, just to highlight for everyone in the group today, how specifically have VAs looked to address the challenge of device hygiene? So to date, over 50 VA hospitals have selected Clean Slate UV to sanitize devices. This includes major deployments at, and this is all obviously publicly available in the tender information, but VA Cleveland, VA Albuquerque, Jesse Brown VA, as well as a number of others. And based on our data set, we are estimating we've sanitized over 4 million devices right now with a facility ROI of anywhere between 6 and 10 months, depending on usage, all while obviously improving staff and patient hygiene. And we're not going to have time in this shorter presentation today to go into our full case study that helps us quantify ROI and that we use as the baseline, really set the standard for how hospitals are now evaluating the ROI of various device hygiene solutions. This is a case study that's actively available on our website, and I'd encourage anyone who wants to look at it to go and take a look. But at a super high level, I'll talk about how specifically Clean Slate UV as a UV light solution for VA hospitals and for healthcare across the United States, what we've done to address the challenges that hospitals have seen. And these are really like 4 main criteria that we've seen large, ambulatory care hospitals or other rural regional hospitals use, which is cycle time, capacity, enabling hand hygiene, and then ease of use. Because all of this comes down to how often is it going to get used, where can we put it, what can we put into it, and how does it complement our overall infection control efforts. So these are 4 really, really important criteria. And we've gotten, not only just obviously we have fantastic user feedback and we have a lot of data to back these statements up. But this facility deployment is a really good example of how when you do a full facility deployment, when you look at addressing device hygiene in all of the, in this case, patient check-in areas, that you can see meaningful workflow improvements. So improvements in the time it actually takes to sanitize every single device. So the CDC and JCO mandated processes for sanitizing devices, doing that faster, doing it without damaging devices, and doing it while allowing hand and device hygiene to occur simultaneously. And what we've been able to prove out, and something that our cost savings that we've been able to push over to obviously to the VA side of the business as well, is that Clean Slate just costs less than wipes. It is every single cycle, takes less time, it costs less, It is more environmentally friendly because it doesn't create waste every single time it's used. And what we've seen outside of the VA is that this has proven about a 4.5 month complete ROI in the solution when you factor in labor cost savings, based on usage in higher traffic environments. For our VA usage statistics, for our VA ROI prediction or calculations, we've traditionally stretched this out to accommodate for more deployments in things like C-Box and some lower volume, but still incredibly important high acuity areas that we want to make sure we solve this problem in. And ultimately, we've talked a lot about the Clean Slate solution. We've mentioned the name. Here's what it actually is, and this is what we're all about. Clean Slate is a tool for sanitizing a range of devices in 20 seconds. This is something you can find more on our website if you want to explore this. It's something that along with standard communications, we can facilitate demos, meetings, all that kind of stuff anywhere in the VA. And as Brandon mentioned, it's actually available on ECAT for order. So this is something that we are incredibly passionate about at Clean Slate. This is a very brief snapshot of how the technology actually works, and it's meant to be so simple that anyone can use it. It takes 20 seconds, gets 99.999% of our MRSA and other superbugs. It's an incredibly powerful, simple, easy to use solution. And as Brandon mentioned, it's also been extensively validated, not just by other hospitals, by VAs, all that kind of stuff, but also by third-party EPA accredited labs. And this is incredibly important for us. So if anyone here wants to learn more about not just device hygiene, but really how to address this challenge and how to solve this problem at a facility-wide level, please go to cleanslateuv.com/resources. This is, again, we have by far, the most research in terms of how to evaluate different types of UV sanitizers, how to look at non-UV options and how to compare them for what's best for your workflow, and ultimately to achieve our collective goals, which is to ensure that staff and patients and visitors don't get sick from the germs on devices. So with that being said, we'll get to one or two questions that are in the queue here, and then we will let everyone go and wrap up this webinar. And just say in advance of that, thank you everyone for joining today. So one of the questions that was asked from attendee is, what's the advantage of having Clean Slate UV versus full room UV sanitizers? So this is a great question. Ultimately, our contention and our goal is to have all these things work as different parts of a comprehensive infection control strategy. The benefit of, if your facilities are using full room UV, which a lot of VA hospitals are, the benefit of that is that there's going to be a base understanding of how the technology works inside the building. There's going to be an understanding of the benefits and how it compares to manual cleaning alone. And ultimately what you're doing is we want to make sure that we tackle all the different modes of transmission for bacteria, for viruses, and for spores. And full room, is great for environmental contamination. It doesn't deal with the germs that we are carrying in our pockets and in our hands and going in and out of clinical areas with, and that's ultimately what Clean Slate is there to accomplish. And last question it'll deal with is, does Clean Slate have any tools to manage the devices remotely or simplify maintenance? So the answer is yes. Clean Slate, part of our mission is to create intelligent hygiene solutions. And through our new Clean Cloud technology, which is coming out this month, so world premiere on this webinar, through our Clean Cloud technology, we allow facilities to not only track usage, trends in different areas, look at, get proactive maintenance alerts, all that kind of stuff, but we also then allow for connections with other IoT technologies in the hospital, the ability to quantify the ROI that you've achieved, all that kind of stuff. And it's one of the things that our customer success team and our product teams are really, really happy to work with any clients, whether they're in the VA or outside the VA, on across the USA. So with that being said, we'll end this webinar today. We're exactly at 30 minutes since we started here. And I will say thank you to everyone here who has joined. We will be sending out this recording in the next 72 hours, probably on Monday, just to avoid everyone getting this before the weekend, so that folks can circulate this to any colleagues who you want to make sure can get an insight into, again, not only the challenge of device hygiene and what ultimately we're trying to solve and why it's important for facilities to solve this, but also the various different technological routes that can be taken to addressing that, and ultimately why we believe that UV light is a really good technology to solve, or technological approach for this problem. That's, thank you again to Brandon for joining us today and for lending his expertise in the VA. Brandon, hope you have a good weekend, and thank you to everyone here for taking the time.
Thanks, Taylor.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.